Thanks for joining us for the February edition of Books in Focus. We're going to talk about books coming out in February. We like to start with some authors that you're going to be familiar with. Hopefully these people are on your radar already, so we want to get you on the holds list for them. Local favorite, I guess I could say, Jojo Moyes. Not making a shout. Jojo Moyes has a new one. Everyone else, someone else's shoes. A warm, funny tale of how things get turned upside down in an instant when two women swap gym bags on accident at the gym one day. Pam Janoff, codenamed Sapphire, takes place in 1942. A woman seeks to rescue her family from a train bound for Auschwitz, from the best-selling author of The Lost Girls of Paris and several other titles. We have the newest, Joe Pickett from C.J. Box, will be out later in February. Joe's going to investigate a University of Wyoming professor's disappearance, leading to a local hunting investigation during a pending storm. So lots going on in that one. 3 Days to Live is by James Patterson and is out, Valentine's Day. And he's the only author on this one, so I was intrigued. Yeah. 3 new thrillers. It sounds like we're getting 3 mini thrillers in one. 3 Days to Live, the title mini story, is about a revenge-soaked honeymoon. We also have Women and Children First, which is about a former military tech exec who was given an order to kill his family, and The Housekeepers. A Los Angeles doctor may have accidentally hired Russian operatives to clean her house. It's a good mix right there, you never know. A Natural History is book 38 in the Alex Delaware series. Dr. Delaware is going to help a woman who finds her boss murdered at work. The newest from J.D. Robb, book number 56. After a glittering A-list party, one of the host's days are numbered, and Eve has to work the party for clues. The Last Kingdom by Steve Berry, book 17 in Cotton Malone series, is a race across Bavaria for hidden clues in King Ludwig II's castles, for historical fiction thriller fans. Sound like a good mix? And More Than Meets the Eye is going to be the 10th book in the Kendra Michael series. Serial killer James Michael Barrett leads Kendra down an accelerating, twisty path before he claims his next victim. She needs to figure it out ASAP because officers are dying and college students are disappearing. So it sounds like a lot of hot thrillers coming out in February. Also some noteworthy nonfiction.
How about that? We see James Patterson's name on the nonfiction list as well. His new contribution is Walk the Blue Line. This says no left, no right, just police officers telling their own stories. The Big Myth by Naomi Oreskes. She's going to talk about free market ideology and how, in her belief, that stifles democracy. Mm-hmm. Look at economics, a look at some philosophy, look at some history. The Diary Keepers by Nina Siegel. Siegel has mined the diaries of some ordinary citizens from the Netherlands to understand the nature of resistance and not resisting, I think it was part of it. Human memory and re-envisioning the past.
So this is World War II?
Yeah, evidently things weren't quite as neutral as the world was led to believe. Say the Right Thing by Kenji Yoshino. Yoshino has laid out a pathway out of cancel culture with the goal of having more meaningful dialogue on issues of identity and moving us forward from unconsciously hurting one another to consciously helping one another. Psych, The Story of the Human Mind by Paul Bloom. Professor Bloom is he is at the University of Toronto and at Yale. His doctoral thesis was on semantics and how they form human thought, the interrelationship between the two. And now he has written a book on topics that he has taught about for decades: language, learning, perception, and memory. and the amazing abilities that humans possess in these areas. Also, he could ask the question, why is our eagerness to believe nonsense off the charts?
Could you say that again? Why?
Why is our eagerness to believe nonsense off the charts?
When you did language to, with perception, there were 4 words, could you give the other 2 again?
Language, learning, perception, and memory. Next we have the Climate Book by Greta Thunberg. Miss Greta has spearheaded this anthology of essays, and she contributed to them as well. And this is going to be a range of essayist skill. We're going to go from Miss Thunberg's her stark conviction of youth and her activist directness, and it's going to also include some more mature, seasoned writers who weave messages with skill and beauty. So,
Is Attenberg in there?
huh?
Is it Attenberg?
No, Thunberg, T-H.
No, I know
Oh.
that, but the essays.
Oh, is he gonna be in there? Yeah, I don't know.
Alright.
I didn't see a list of who else contributed.
Probably
He
online.
would be likely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then A Mystery of Mysteries is gonna take a look at the death and life of Edgar Allan Poe. And Mark Dawidziak is doing that through the prism of Poe's mysterious death. We're having a program too on the 19th, and it should be fun. And BFF, A Memoir of Friendship Lost and Found by Christy Tate. Miss Tate was the author of Group, which was a New York Times bestseller. And in this book is a moving, heartwarming, and powerful memoir about her lifelong struggle to sustain her female friendships.
So first up for new fiction, we've got Victory City coming out by Salman Rushdie. So this story is set in 14th century southern India. The main character is a young girl named Pampa, who is grieving the loss of her mother. And after a chance encounter, she becomes the vessel for a goddess and is tasked to build a great city. So this one's being described as a saga of love and adventure. It's written in the style of an ancient epic, and it's full of myth and imagination. A couple read-alikes. First off is The Daughters of Izdihar. This one's set in a world inspired by Egyptian history. Magic is real, national tensions are growing in this world, and it's the story of 2 women who discover they have more in common than they think. And then in A Garden Burning Gold, which is available in ebook and e-audiobook, this one's an epic fantasy tale about a twin brother and sister with incredible magical powers who must keep their world from crashing down around them. Next is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. So this is a new thriller. The main character is Bodhi, a woman who has been trying to put the murder of her boarding school roommate behind her. It's been several years and the killer was convicted, but when she's invited back to this New Hampshire school to teach a class, she finds herself falling down the rabbit hole. This book is a well-crafted, stirring investigation into collective memory and is populated with a large cast of unforgettable characters. Couple other similar books would be We Begin at the End, which you're probably familiar with from book discussion. But this one's about a small town police chief who's still trying to heal old wounds from having given the testimony that sent his best friend to prison. And then Age of Consent by Amanda Brainerd. This one's more of a coming of age tale than a thriller per se, but covers similar topics of girls in a boarding school and them negotiating all that entails. Age of Consent is set in the 1980s, and actually this, I have some questions for you, book. A lot of the action takes place in the 90s, so you have that similarity going for you as well.
So Don't Fear the Reaper is actually a sequel. It's gonna be the follow-up to My Heart is a Chainsaw. For those of you that aren't familiar with Stephen Graham Jones, he is consistently reviewed for being a new, innovative horror thriller writer that brings something new to the genre, something, I'll say je ne sais quoi, because I don't know exactly what it is, because I haven't read him yet, but I keep reading great things about him, so maybe someone new and exciting to check out. So My Heart is a Chainsaw, we have a strong female protagonist that is well aware of all the horror movie tropes and myths and legends, and she finds herself surprised to get sucked into all of them. So she's in a survival for her life kind of situation, fighting with a serial killer. So here's a spoiler alert, at the end of this one, she's imprisoned. That's, I think, the twist at the end. Sorry. Because my Don't Fear the Reaper is going to start out with her conviction being overturned. She gets out of prison, and before she can settle into her life again, an intense storm leads to a prison conflict, and her local enemy, whose name is Dark Mill South for some weird reason, I don't know what kind of name or tagline that is, but he has escaped from prison. And so once again, the hunt is on. Despite it sounding a little hokey, he is reviewed well, and the character promises to be sharp and funny, and I think he tries to do a spin on, scary movie tropes and things like that. Rita likes also check out Chuck Wendig's The Book of Accidents that has a lot of harrowing, thrilling, violent adventures as well. Greg Corbett's The Last Orphan is going to be the 8th in this series. So we do have them all if you need to get caught up on them. It sounds very intriguing. The Orphan Project trained orphans as secret agents of the government. And so in this Orphan series, we follow the main character who's rebranded himself as the Nowhere Man and his struggle and the other orphans' struggle. In this one, the government has started eliminating their previously trained orphans, and the Nowhere Man, our main character, is going to stop at nothing to avoid their reach and being taken out until one little mistake, and he might get in trouble. Maybe he'll survive for another book, maybe not. For fans of Mark Gurney and Mark Cameron, who write Jack Ryan series, Tom Clancy series, thrilling, get to know the characters, what's going to happen next, heart-pounding, page-turning action.
Category of inspirational fiction. We have Every Good Gift by Kelly Irvin. There's 3 books, the Amish Blessing books. It is not necessarily a series, however, but it's her writing, and she's kind of written them in this cluster of 3. Macy knows that she will never leave her faith to marry her baby's English father. To spare her family's scandal, she goes to live with a cousin in Kansas, where she meets Joshua, who is not bothered by her situation or ashamed to be seen with her. But his faith has wavered since the death of his twin brother. Can 2 people who are struggling to believe help each other discover God's plans for their future? These are Amish stories, and The Warmth of Sunshine is another one her 3 books about the blessings of the Amish Blessings book. And then I also chose a Tracy Peterson and Judith Miller collaboration, To Love and to Cherish, which is also about marriage and relationships and how their particular faiths, there's always elements of faith and how the faith sort of impacts their decisions and their lives. Direction of the wind. As soon as I put these books up, you'll probably know exactly what the theme is going to be. The Direction of the Wind by Shah Mansi. In Ahmedabad, India, Sophie Shaw searches for answers about a mother she barely remembers. Fueled by creative ambitions, young Nita moved to Paris, the artist capital of the world, even though it meant leaving her family behind. Her daughter Sophie was 6 years old when she was told that her mother had died. For 22 years, she shouldered the burden of that loss, but her mother didn't die, she just left. Sophie risks her future plans to jet off to Paris, where she chases lead after lead to piece together a startling portrait of her mother. This is, I thought of 50 words for rain for this too, but I think it's checked out. The relationship with the mother. Where the Crawdads Sing, obviously, woman walking away from her family. And The Secret Life of Bees, also about a daughter struggling to come to terms with that missing mother piece. And I actually had a friend to whom this happened in real life. She grew up believing that her mother was dead. And after her father's passing, she found out that her mother was not dead. And she was raised as an only child. She found out she had 2 full siblings. They were not step siblings, but her mother and father had gone on to have 2 more children. But her father and grandmother, their whole lives convinced her that her mother was not living. So, yeah. All right, now don't judge me. These are random, I can't, I don't know here.
Mention there's a few employees who like.
I know, right? Yeah, don't tell on me. This is just like this is just what it says it is, but Murder Your Employer is by Rupert Holmes. Now, I don't know if that name's gonna ring bells, but do you like pina coladas? That's the same Rupert Holmes, the song. He's also a playwright and has won some positive attention for that skill as well. This is a devilish thriller with a killer concept. The McMaster's Conservatory for the Applied Arts is a luxurious and clandestine college dedicated to the fine art of murder, where students study how best to delete their most deserving victim. To gain admission, a student must have an ethical reason for erasing someone who deeply deserves a fate no worse than death, or better than death. Mandatory graduation thesis is getting away with the perfect murder of someone whose death will make the world a much better place to live. So, as we chuckle through this, I thought of Richard Osman. His story is a little unlikely, but always entertaining. I also chose Learning to Kill by Ed McBain, not because it's also a book that teaches about killing, but it's about Ed McBain's early work. he wrote a lot of things under various, pseudonyms, is that the word? Okay, and these are things that, were published, usually in a magazine or as a short story, very early on. So we can, maybe a look at that will kind of help us follow how to write, how to learn about writing about killing before we think about going to the school to become the killer, before we write our thesis.
Get educated before you.
Yes, yeah,
actually-
oh yeah. Can't have too much education.
Excuse me. Could you move that spot, that light spot, it just covers the, and then,
Yeah, I don't know what she normally blocks that
Does she?
screen.
It is,
The
I think
paper
like
will
that.
fall over, it has to be something more rigid.
that light reflects right onto that book.
So she left us explicit directions.
Put the book on either
everything
side of
else.
the light. Put it on the edges.
Does that make any difference?
Not much,
Yeah, I think it
a little bit.
So that's how you got.
probably the best we can do for now.
Yeah, she did put something on it, but I don't know what.
Yeah, maybe like my little finger or something.
Yeah, it's the camera's on. We don't have where a camera is on that. So, hold, Oops, it's still.
Okay, the Scarlet Circus. So this is actually a short story collection. So you have 11 charming and entertaining fantasy tales that pull from traditional folklore. The stories, they vary in style and pacing and length, but they all focus on the central theme of love. There are a fair share of your typical fairy tale endings here, but there's also loss featured. One reviewer says, with romantic tales inspired by history, dragons, and literature, The Scarlet Circus is a bright romance anthology marked by people's agile maneuvers. So for read-alikes, I picked two other short story collections that at least loosely are focused on that theme of love, although I think these two books are probably significantly different in tone. But Color Outside the Lines is an anthology of short stories that in particular explores interracial relationships. And then Love Like That is another collection of 9 darkly playful and moving stories about women who, at their darkest and loneliest times, discover what is worth loving in the world. That knife looks pretty foreboding.
Yeah, the cake looks good.
Which one looks most in the world? Cake.
Oh, that's right. Okay, we're gonna be a book short here because I couldn't find it on the shelf. But The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. This is, you could call it an historical fantasy. It's set in an alternate 1912 United Kingdom. It's a coming-of-age story about a sheltered teenage girl, Biddy, who has lived on a magical island since she was a baby, with her eccentric guardian. One night, when her guardian does not return from one of his mysterious errands, she has to leave the island and venture into the outside world for the first time, and finds herself fighting against powerful enemies who are trying to hoard the world's magic for themselves. This one is an immersive and compelling read with deeply felt characters. So one read alike is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrew Stewart. In this one you have the daughter of a king who has been trapped in the palace, and she's determined to learn the secret of the magic that kind of runs the kingdom. The one I couldn't find is called Dark Earth by Rebecca Stott, and that one's about 2 sisters living in exile with their father. Hey, their father has taught them forbidden magic, and they are fighting to survive against an evil local warlord. More on that later.
have not told him.
Is this the one?
This one's for Becky.
She would have put the bone shark's daughter up there, but she couldn't find it.
Wasn't available. So A Day, a Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This novel is in the fantasy category. It's the standalone prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, which is this story here. So if you're interested in, finding out more before you read this one. These are the lives of 4 women who lived through a course of events that shaped their world for generations to come. It is a beautifully realized and complex story with rich and intricate mythology. And the read-alikes I brought were Children of Blood and Bone. That has just been immensely popular and is also a story that features women and their legacy. Dark Earth is, it is a story of the suppressed magic and the warlord. This is based on true events. It is from Dark Earth is a reference to what is found under the marketplace in London from the time it was run by the Romans. So before the Romans left England, there was a marketplace, and then the Romans left, and everything went all askew. And the earth as when they dig it up is darker there, so it's called Dark Earth. And Rebecca Stott was taking a walk in the area, and she found a brooch, and she discussed with the archaeologist that she was with the meaning of the brooch, and that launched this whole story. So there's kernels of truth in the story. It's very well written. It's a great book. Dark Earth?
I don't want the big.
You don't want that big one? Ian, I think you'll like this one. Yeah, I think it's up your alley. Now you're not gonna find it on the shelf again. Sorry.
I don't want it.
Never mind. Okay, MC Beaton. I think I could only find one of those, right? Oh, no, it's not true. That's not true. Death of a Traitor. What we have is a Sergeant Hamish Macbeth, another installment in that series by Beatons. I brought one of the former one. So the disappearance of Kate Hubbard who is a newcomer and a busybody, and Macbeth becomes befuddled by a storm of lies, intrigue, and scandal, and the sneaking suspicion that Kate was someone much more sinister than she claimed. So she disappears and sets off this investigation, and the nosy neighbor and the crime thriller are common mates in literature. So there are lots of things. But this one was so obvious, The Neighbor's Secret. So that's why I chose that one as a read-alike by Alison Heller. I got all the good ones today, didn't I? Look, here's Tim Dorsey. We're done laughing. Have you read him before? Okay, he's very funny. Tim Dorsey has he's written several books. This is Surge Storm is back, and he is on the road in the latest zany Florida caper with Florida's most lovable serial killer involved. The real party is about to get started. So who knew serial killers could be fun? My sister, the serial killer, is evidently by Oynan, have you read it? Okay, Oynan Braithwaite is supposed to be hysterically funny. I have not read it, but sounds like a fun one. And then any Tim Dorsey, just if you want, they read very quickly, they're very silly, and they will probably make you laugh.
Christine gets to sit for a minute. I don't know how long, but so. So the latest from Dan Simmons is of note because he hasn't published in 10 years roundabout, and he usually writes fantasies or other sort of scary settings. So this one's going to be a bit of a departure based on what I found on him. Omega Canyon is about brothers Paul and Eric who have fled Nazi-controlled Europe. Paul has escaped to America and he's going to help work on the atomic bomb. Eric's working with British intelligence to seek Nazi atomic scientists out in Europe where they're hiding. And both must come together and work together to help their family who's still in unsafe places. It made me think of Dragonfly by Leah Meacham, and this had a bunch of counterintelligence spies working together from different departments for the safety of each other and the project that they were working on. And then this is Dan Simmons, I believe most recent one. He's got a couple of big scary ones on the shelf though, The Abominable. You need to read some Dan Simmons before Omega Canyon. Oh, somebody else.
That's me.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had the next one, sorry.
Came up very quickly, didn't
I
it?
jinxed it.
Okay, so Murder at an Irish Castle, not to be confused with Murder in an Irish Castle, and or to be confused with the book of the same title by a completely different author. Just to save you all from going down the hole of no return that I was on this morning. I didn't know if it was Eric's problem or my problem, or that's nobody's problem. In any case, this young lady is Ellie Brannigan, and she has written this cozy mystery, Murder at an Irish Castle. The protagonist is a Rodeo Drive bridal wear designer. Her name is Rain McGrath. She had great expectations for her 30th birthday. It was going to end with champagne, lobster, and a diamond engagement ring for her fiance. But instead, she's flat broke and busted on a plane to Ireland, where she discovers that her uncle has left her a rundown family castle. And if she does not get this castle up and running, the entire village is going to be financially ruined. So, just how did this uncle actually die? There comes the mystery. This is reviewed as having a sharp protagonist, twists and turns, and takes place in a colorful and quirky Irish village. So there are any number of cozy mysteries that take place in Ireland, and I just happened to grab this one, Bryce Bowen, because it says in Dublin's Fair City, which is rather obvious where it takes place. And I was exhausted from my search to figure out the Did you guys pick any books, or what are we doing here?
I blame Patrick.
I'm kidding. Patrick actually saved you from, I had like all of mine in one chunk. Mixed it up a little bit. So Stone Blind is Natalie Haynes' literary fantasy. This is a fresh and stunning perceptive take on the story of Medusa. Stoneblind turns our understanding of this myth on its head, bringing empathy and nuance to one of the earliest stories in which a woman injured by a powerful man is blamed, punished, and monstered for the assault. This is a retelling of these myths and fairy tales. It's happening in all over the place in the literary world. In science fiction, Naomi Novik, she's written several retellings. Spinning Silver is her retelling of the Rumpelstiltskin story. I've read a few of her books. She is a very amazing writer. And Circe, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but by Madeline Miller was very popular a couple of years ago. And it too is a retelling that focuses on the very early myths that removed women from the places of power.
Black Candle Women. It's gonna be this author's debut. It's about 3 generations of the same family, the Matros family. These 3 women are living together in a comfy, cozy California bungalow. Everything's going wonderful. The youngest member of the family brings home a date, a boy, and her mother and grandmother panic because now their quiet lives are gonna take a surprising turn and they must reveal the family curse. So the family is gonna explore their history, which leads them back to a 1950s New Orleans voodoo shop to see if they can work together and overcome this family curse. For read-alikes, out last year, we have Black Girls Must Die Exhausted from Jane Allen. For similar themes, similar humor, similar family exploratory writing styles. And it also made me think of Alice Hoffman's Magic Lessons in Practical Magic because they also had a family curse around the men that they dated as well. I think they were sisters in that one. Next up, The House Guest is gonna be the latest from Hank Philby Ryan. This is her previous one, I do believe. She's got a couple thrillers on the shelf. Similar tone to Wendy Walker's Don't Look For Me out last year. But this new one is going to be a great cat and mouse thriller. Only we don't know who the cat is and we don't know who the mouse is right away. A devastating divorce, and when a devastating divorce happens, you and your spouse have to divvy up your friends, your assets, your lives. It's usually not a good time to be making new friends, but main character Alyssa makes an accidental new friend with an FBI agent that shows up on her door. Bree is also going through a sticky divorce and they bond quickly. Maybe a little too quickly. Maybe they could solve each other's problems. Or maybe this deal is too good to be true. Spell of good things.
A Spell of Good Things by Ayobami Adebayo. This is a general fiction release, and it is the story of Eniola, who's a poor boy whose family can no longer afford to send him to school, and Wariola, the perfect child of a wealthy family. And their lives become entwined and set the stage for Adebayo to deliver a searing indictment of Nigeria's corruption and gender inequalities, the gaping divide between the haves and the have-nots, and the shared humanity that lives in between. So it's going to take a broad look at that culture, similar to the way Chinua Achebe has done with Things Fall Apart, and David Galgut with The Promise. Achebe is also Western Africa. I don't remember, but, Galu is South Africa. So a little bit of a different perspective.
Okay, so Veronica Roth, if you've heard of her, it's probably because of her Divergent YA book series that came out a little while ago, and they have movies of it, popular series. This one is not a YA book, and it's actually a novella, so a shorter read. But this is in the sci-fi genre, and it's a gripping and atmospheric reimagining of the story of Antigone. It's set in the future in the last city on a desolate Earth. Antigone's parents have died, and her uncle Creon has overthrown the government, and she's now basically living as a prisoner in her mansion, in his mansion. In this imagined future, the continuation of a genetically flawed human race depends on genetically engineering and implanting embryos into surrogates. Publishers Weekly says the plot preserves the shape of the original without ever losing the capacity to surprise and, more importantly, prod reflection and recognition. This powerful tale of reproductive oppression is sure to wow. So, in the similar vein of dystopia, oppressive societies, of course, The Handmaid's Tale comes to mind, which features Offred, a woman who lives in a society where women are only valued for their reproductive viability. And similarly, another story set in a dystopian future, Future Home of the Living God, is about a young pregnant woman that explores themes of agency, biology, and rights.
Reworded it. So this is another debut thriller. The author is a screenwriter and comedy writer in Los Angeles. This is their husband. I didn't see anything that I recognized from her rap sheet. But in this thriller, main character B and her mother have been conning men for years. They are on to their next plan, which involves finding a rich man for B to marry. Things are going as planned, and B is starting to care for her Mark Colin, until Colin's childhood friend Gail comes back to town and things get stirred up. B is usually so sure of her moves and manipulation, but things with Colin and Gail and her mom and Colin's family and all this drama is threatening to expose her past and her cons. The characters are said to be sharp and entertaining with some surprising twists. So it made me think of Good Rich People for this kind of snarky look at how the elite live. It also made me think of this Finley Donovan series. The newest one in this trilogy came out last month, which put it on my radar. And this also has a very quirky, strong female lead in very unpredictable situations with some great writing as well. Looking for Jane is a historical fiction. Says it'll be quick-paced and heartfelt. Likes. This is going to be the American debut of Heather Marshall, who is a Canadian. It's going to be inspired by true stories. Three women's lives are intertwined around a secret network of people fighting for their women's right to choose. In 2017, Angela discovers a mysterious letter with a life-shattering story, and she wants to get it to the original intended recipient. In her research, she finds out about the Jane Network, which was a secret doctor healthcare network where Jane was the code word for women in trouble in the 1970s that needed help. And so we learn more about, in the 1970s, Dr. Taylor, who joins the Jane Network to help provide for women seeking abortions despite constant police threats and raids. In 1980s, we're going to meet Nancy, and she finds the Jane Network as she is in need of help and healthcare and meets Dr. Taylor. So check out some read-alikes. Alice Quinn The Alice Network and Kate Quinn seems to write a similar theme where things are done underground and strong female characters working under terrible situations and tons of police threats. J. Courtney Sullivan's Maine also came to mind because it's about interwoven stories of mothers and daughters and families and secrets and letters and all those kinds of things that looking for Jane invoked for me.
Okay, so Wild Massive, another sci-fi title here. The main character is Carissa. She's a young woman who lives in an elevator in a structure known as the Building. It's an infinitely tall skyscraper in the center of the multiverse. Each floor essentially containing its own world. She's content aimlessly exploring the different floors until a shapeshifter with aims of thwarting the association that rules the building drops on top of her elevator. And the two end up having to seek refuge in what's known as the Wild Massive, which is a vast chain of theme parks found within the building. So this is a story about weak standing up to strong. It has well-rendered characters and a propulsive plot. A couple read-alikes I brought is another book by Scott Moore, Battle of the Linguist Mages. That one's set in LA. You've got magic, totalitarianism, and beings from other dimensions all in that book. And Ready Player One is another imaginative sci-fi adventure that largely takes place inside of a virtual world. And next is The Librarian of Burned Books. This author is a best-selling thriller writer, so I think this is a little bit of a term for her, although I'm sure there are elements of suspense and whatnot within this historical novel. This one was inspired by the true story of something called the Council of Books in Wartime, which was a World War II organization founded by booksellers, publishers, librarians, and authors to use books as, quote, weapons in the war of ideas. So World War II era, 3 female characters, similar to the one you just mentioned, who all live in different cities and who are all in some way resisting the Nazi threat through the use of books, basically. And if you like that theme, that kind of setup, it's not too hard to find. Here are a couple others. Got the Paris Library, which is about a librarian at the American Library in Paris who joins the resistance in 1939. And the Librarian Spy, you have 2 main characters in this one. One of whom is a librarian who works undercover as a spy, and the other character helps run a printing press for the resistance.
They're gonna throw the books at the Nazis, of course, right?
Paper cuts.
Okay, J.T. Ellison is a popular author with some other ones to check out on the shelf. Thriller-style family dramas, page-turners. I brought read-alikes from Mary Kubrick and Sally Hempworth, who we keep talking about these authors in Books in Focus because they do better and more impressive book sales and a longer holds list with each book coming out. So check out some of these female authors if you need a new thriller. Ruth Ware wrote a little blurb for this. It's One of Us. She describes it as a heart-stoppingly tense thriller about the price of secrets and the layers behind every marriage. So there's my little description. Everybody lies, even the people we are closest to. Olivia Bender is an in-demand interior designer. She's happily married, and she's currently struggling with her infertility. The police show up on her doorstep one day and ask for her husband. The police say that after some DNA testing and gathering in a murder scene, her husband's son is the prime suspect in this murder investigation. The only problem is Olivia and her husband did not know he had a son. It promises to be an emotionally layered thriller filled with secrets.
Okay, we've made it into the nonfiction. This one's called Win Every Argument. So the author, Mehdi Hassan, is a journalist and anchor for MSNBC who has, interviewed high-ranking political officials in his tenure. So he's speaking from his experience doing that. You can think of this as a guide to the art of argument and rhetoric. He talks about how to debate productively with confidence, how to sharpen your speaking skills, and a big part of it is him analyzing the styles and strategies of famous figures and their techniques. It's described as sharp, perceptive, and entertaining. One read alike is Thank You for Arguing by Jay Heinrichs. This one is, quote, a masterclass in the art of persuasion taught by professors ranging from Bart Simpson to Winston Churchill. So he pulls, again, he's looking at famous figures, fictional or otherwise, to give you some tips for arguing. And then Big Ugly is another book. This one's by Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert. But he's basically talking about how to persuade. So.
Saying it loud. This is by journalist Mark Whitaker. Mr. Whitaker is telling the story of how the Black Power phenomenon began to challenge the traditional civil rights movement in the turbulent year of 1966. Whitaker has gathered new details and insights from key players and journalists who covered the stories. Saying it loud also makes a compelling case for why the lessons from 1966 still resonate in the era of Black Lives Matter and the fierce contemporary battles over voting rights, identity politics, and the teaching of Black history. So I could have scooped up shelves of books, similar topic, not specific to Black Power, that particular movement, but the way we're still trying to clean it up. We're still trying to clean it up. And any of these three, Between the World and Me, New Jim Crow, and there's tons of books. A Rap on Race, we do not have that book, but that's the discussion between, from 1971, between Margaret Mead and James Baldwin, which is actually quite fascinating. I've been reading excerpts of it. Amazing conversation. And that was in 1971, and we're still sweeping that up too, so. If I had the magic way to go forward, I'd tell you. Just have to keep trying.
Who is the author of All the White Friends I Couldn't Keep?
Andre Henry. And actually, all three of these books, these were just like right in a row, up in nonfiction. They all three came out in June, so it's ever evolving topics.
So Simon Garfield is a New York Times bestseller. He writes on a couple topics. I picked these two because they represented a good range. He writes The Timekeepers, about the constructs and the history of keeping time in many different ancient civilizations to modern times. Then he also had this Dog's Best Friend, which is a story of him and his beloved dog. And this one proves he's got quite the variety of books in his past to look at. I think we've got two others by him as well. All the knowledge in the world is researched into the surprising history of the encyclopedia and how it has shaped our world. Created by thousands of scholars, participants, thousands of editors, and contributions from Einstein to Gandhi, and helped millions of children with their homework, and now they're sitting around gathering dust, selling for next to nothing, can't give them away at the bookstore. Now that we get our info from our phones and computers for free, what has changed and what has been lost? This book, All the Knowledge of the World, will track the history of the encyclopedia from ancient Greece to China, where the record is an encyclopedia that was 11,000 volumes long, to modern day Wikipedia. The next one, Foolproof. This author sounds really interesting. She is a University of Pennsylvania law professor and a trained psychologist. Fear of playing the fool is a universal psychological phenomenon and a big driver of human behavior. Foolproof follows the implications that not being a sucker can dictate our personal choices and lead to some cultural conflicts. And Tess Wilkinson Ryan's going to talk about our path forward. She's going to show how suckers, fools, marks, chumps, pawns, losers, fool me once, shame on you, Trojan horses, the boy who crawled wolf, the emperor's new clothes have modern day implications in our grocery shopping, road rage, and even hashtag the Me Too movement. She's going to look at the real life manifestations of people who do not want to be made a fool of, which is all of us. So I'm interested in her insights. For read-alikes while we're waiting for this one, we've got the honest truth about dishonesty and quiet, the power of introverts in a world we can't stop talking. Just some new, fresh perspectives, thinking of things in a different way, some exciting nonfiction titles.
Okay, so the new guys, the historic class of astronauts that broke barriers and changed the face of space travel. So this is an exciting and immersive look at NASA's diverse 1978 astronaut class, which I guess was the first one to include women as well as people of color. The author draws on interviews that she had with the astronauts themselves, and the book explores the relationships between the astronauts, gives an inside look at NASA politics of the time. It also brings to life the process the astronauts went through to master what was then the new revolutionary technology of the space shuttle. The book highlights triumphs, but also significant attention is also given to failures like the Challenger disaster of 1986. The author, I guess, has admitted that she's taken some creative liberties in reconstructing some of the scenes and whatnot. So this may not be for you if you don't like that kind of conjecture, but otherwise a good book to check out. This one brought to mind Hidden Figures, which I'm sure you've all heard of, about the black women mathematicians who helped win the space race. Another book in a similar vein is Into the Black by Roland White. And this is the extraordinary untold story of the first flight of the space shuttle Columbia and the men who flew her. And that mission would overlap in the time frame she's covering in this New Guys book. Which I guess the New Guys is the phrase that their predecessors used. They just referred to that group as the New Guys. Despite them including women. Okay, and then we have A Hacker's Mind by Bruce Schneier. So if you haven't heard of Bruce Schneier, he is a cybersecurity expert, also a best-selling author. This book, one reviewer called it both eye-opening and maddening. So basically what he's doing in this book is using his cybersecurity background to look at how the rich and powerful hack, that is, take advantage of loopholes in our society's economic, political, and legal systems. His aim is to help readers detect this kind of hacking, and he advises us on how to defend against the rich and powerful's attempt to subvert and exploit. He also goes into what he sees as the dangers of artificial intelligence as well. If you're interested in reading more of his work, I believe his most recent before this new one is Click Here to Kill Everybody. And this one is much more in the cybersecurity vein. He's exploring the vulnerabilities and dangers in our world where everything is connected to the internet. And then I also pulled The Secret Life of Groceries, just because this seems like it's another book that kind of lifts the curtain on the topic. In this case, the author is investigating the secretive industry of the American supermarket. So that brings us to our conclusion. Next month we'll be here February 14th, so, be sure to bring your Valentines to pass out in the class. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Bring it for one, bring it for all, right?
I think we should do a program sometime on the covers. There were a lot of interesting covers on the new ones coming out.
Yeah. If I can find a presenter, I would love to do it. I'm a cover critic, so there's a difference.
I never paid attention to covers until I met Nicole.
If you want to hear my 2 cents, I'll give it to you, but I know nothing of the history or the marketing or the modern day decision making that goes into the covers. I think we'd all be surprised.
Do you like where covers are going? Or do you dislike where covers are going?
I think that just like anything else, it trends. Sometimes I see trends repeat themselves too much. I'm like, God, I'm so sick of seeing that cover. Some art I like more than others. Easy for you to say.
I have a plan there for,
Just today, but that included
the
hardbound
books that we
probably can audios.
our search history.
That would be good. Yeah, it would be
Audio.
Kindle and, yeah, still. Yeah, you'll, yes, you do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, by all my terrible.